Think about how we use the word evil. We picture a force, something dark and deliberate, a villain who chooses cruelty, who plots, who schemes. Evil in the modern imagination is almost something glamorous. It has agency, intelligence, intention, the clever deceiver, the mastermind. Now hold that image, because in Greek there is a word for the evil person, and that word says something completely different, something that the modern world has entirely forgotten. The word is Poneros, and Poneros means wicked, evil, worthless, and so on. And it is the word in the New Testament for the evil one. It's a word for the unethical person, the corrupt man, the villain. If you want to call someone bad in Greek, morally rotten, this is the word. But here is what is strange. The word says nothing about cleverness, nothing about deceit, nothing about cunning, nothing about scheming. Hidden inside it, it's a hidden root, and that root is not violence, it's not lie, it's not trickery. The root is Ponos, which means pain, toil, and suffering. Pain, Ponos, Poniros. So what is happening here? The Greek word for evil is built out of the word for pain, not out of malice, not out of deception, out of suffering. And this, of course, is not an accident, it is a diagnosis. The Greeks, in building this word, made a statement about the very nature of evil, and it is a statement so deep that we have completely lost it. Let's go down to the root of the word. Ponos, in ancient Greek and in modern Greek, does not simply mean physical pain, the ache, the sting. The word is algos. Ponos is something heavier. It is toil, it is hardship, it is the labor that wears you down. When we speak of the labors of Hercules, we are translating, in a way, pony, not headaches, but ordeals, trials that consumed him. Ponos is the wearing down, it is the erosion that hard struggle works upon the body and the soul. From the same root, we have the verb penome, to toil, to labor, to be poor. And what's the logic of that? The one who toils endlessly, whose life is unbroken labor, becomes the penis, the poor man. Not poor in the narrow financial sense, but the man of toil, the one whose very existence is hardship. Now look at the shape of the word Poniros. That ending, eros, it is not random. In Greek, the endings mark something. So eros marks something that is full, saturated with, weighted down by a quality. We have mochthirос, full of mochthos, full of toil. Achthiros, weighed down by achthos, by burden. Lipiros, full of lipi, full of grief, full of sorrow. Odiniros, full of odini, full of agony. So 4 times now, there is this machine. We have the root of suffering and eros, and you get saturated with that particular suffering. So the 5th word is Poniros, full of Ponos, saturated with toil, weighed down by pain. And here's the interesting thing. The Poniros, etymologically, is not the one who causes harm necessarily. He is first of all the one who has suffered harm. He is the worn down person, the eroded one, the man whose soul has buckled under the weight. So how do we get from one who suffers to the one who is causing suffering and evil? How does the man who is in pain become the man who inflicts it? The answer is the deepest psychological truth the word contains. The one who has been worn down becomes a carrier of that erosion. Suffering does not stay sealed inside us, it leaks and spreads. So the man who has buckled under pain begins to radiate it. They radiate the very thing that corroded them. So evil is not born from some external demonic force invading their innocence. It is born from the damage that is already inside the human being. So the Greek language, inside one single word, diagnosed what psychology would not articulate for millennia. The one who harms was almost always harmed first. Trauma is something that transmits. The Poneros is the suffering man who overflowed. Hold on now to this diagnosis and let's see what the great Greek philosophers did with it, because what is hidden inside the word they made into explicit philosophy. First, Aristotle. When Aristotle speaks of the bad man, he does not describe someone who committed a single bad act. He speaks of mochtheria. Mochtheria, depravity, badness of character. And notice that the same root again, mochthos, toil, for Aristotle is an Hexis. Mochtheria is an Hexis. It is a fixed disposition. Meaning what? Not a momentary act. A permanent condition, a shape the soul has taken, built upon through repetition, through time, like a distortion that has hardened into stone, which is exactly what the word Poneros already says. Not an act, it is a state, a soul that is weighed down, shaped by erosion. The depraved man is not bad in a single moment. He is bad as a way of being, because his soul has set into this form. And now Socrates, who closes the circle perfectly, saying, "Ουδής εκών κακός." No one is evil willingly. No one is bad for his own free will. In its shallow reading, this sounds almost naive. What do you mean? Aren't there people who choose evil? Or worse, it sounds like an excuse, as if no one is responsible for anything. But if we stop on the one word, ekon, willing, of one's own accord, something else opens and overturns all misreadings. What does ekon mean? Usually it is translated as willingly. But a true willing act, in the full sense, it's not something you wanted in the moment. It is an act that flows from a self, from someone who has been already formed, who knows what he wants and why, and who is the master of himself. And here's the key. The Poniros person, precisely because he is the worn down, the eroded one, has never arrived there, has never developed that inner freedom that would let him truly choose. He acts out of his passion, out of damage, out of ignorance. He is a slave of his own passions, the automaton of his own suffering. He does not choose evil. Evil moves him. In other words, free will is not something you possess simply because you were born human. It is an achievement, you develop it, and the road to it passes through one gate alone, self-knowledge. This is why no one is evil willingly, is inseparable from the other great Socratic command, notice αυτόν, know thyself. Socrates is not just saying no one chooses evil, he's saying something far deeper. Evil is ignorance, and first of all, ignorance of one's own self. The one who does not know himself does not yet have a self with which to choose freely. He's a crowd of passions and fears that push him with no center to govern. So, no one is evil willingly. It does not mean no one is to blame. It means no one who has truly attained himself, who has reached self-knowledge, and therefore real freedom, turns toward evil. Because evil is precisely the condition of the one who never got there, the man who stayed a slave to his own erosion, because he never knew himself well enough to be free. Now someone will object and say maybe that this is determinism. If the Poneros could not have chosen otherwise, then no one is free and no one is responsible. But this objection assumes freedom is a switch, on and off. You either have it or you don't. And that is exactly the error. The Greeks did not see freedom as a possession. They saw it as a motion, an energia, an inner movement toward self-mastery that a person either undertakes or neglects. The determinist and his opponent are arguing on the same flat ground. Both assume the will is a fixed thing already there, simply waiting to be used or denied. Socrates is pointing somewhere they aren't even looking, inward, at a freedom that is not given and not refused, but it is grown. The Poneros is not unfree because some external chain bound him. He is unfree because he never undertook the inner motion, never turned to face himself. And that turning was always available to him. This is where his responsibility lies, not in the single act, but in the long life of self-neglect that has shaped the soul. And this is Aristotle's point as well. We are responsible for the Hexis we build, even if once it has hardened, we can no longer simply act otherwise. The drunk is not excused because he cannot now walk straight. He is answerable for the man he let himself become. Now, how everything locks together. We began saying that the Poneros is not the clever schemer, he's the suffering one. Aristotle confirmed it. It is a settled state and not an act. And Socrates lays the final, deepest stone to this. That state is the very ignorance of self. And so Poneros is never truly free. He is a victim of his own damage before he is the agent of anyone else's. The opposite of Poneros in Greek is not good in some vague sense. It is Chrestos. Christos from Chri, it is needful, it is useful, that which is needed, which benefits, which works. So the Christos man is the useful one, the one whose very being produces benefit for those around him. So look at this pair, Christos and Poneros. Greek ethics does not think of good and evil as commandments. It does not say this is forbidden, this is permitted. It thinks of good and evil as functions. What benefits and what wears down. The Christos is the one who functions. The one who functions, the one whose existence helps, and who, having knowing like himself, he is truly free. The Poneros is the one who is so eroded that he no longer helps, who instead spreads his own erosion. He is a slave to his impulses he never understood. So evil, to the ancient Greek mind, is not sin, it is a malfunction. It is a soul that has broken down under the weight of pain, that never learned itself well enough to be repaired. Now let's go back to the beginning, to the word evil. We usually picture a dark, deliberate power, but now we see that it means the suffering one, the man whom erosion conquered and who now transmits it because he never knew himself well enough to be freed from it. And once you truly understand this, something is switching, because you have to ask yourself, where am I standing on this? But also, next time you meet a Poneros, a wicked person, someone who does you harm, the word itself whispers a truth we easily forget. behind this corruption, there is always pain, and behind a pain, there is a human being who never became master of himself. This is no excuse, of course. Aristotle wouldn't forgive depravity. The Hexis remains an Hexis, the erosion remains an erosion, and the Chrestos remains the goal. But it is understanding. It is a way of seeing evil not as a demonic force from somewhere outside, but as a wound from within, and as an ignorance that was never healed. So if the Poneros is the one who never knew himself, then the road out of evil is not punishment and not fear. It is γνώθης αυτόν, know thyself. It is the slow, painful achievement of the self. The one that turns suffering into freedom and the worn down into the Christos. So this is the wisdom hidden inside the word Poneros. And it's been there for thousands of years. The Greeks did not write an academic thesis of what is the nature of evil. They did that too, but they put it inside a word. And they connected it to the root of the word. And the word carries still its meaning every time we say it without even knowing. And it's a word we still use in Greek every day. He is Poneros. Now we know the whole spectrum of the word Poneros.